I'd known I was a dyke since I was 13. I'd known really clearly, really viscerally, unmistakably. But I didn't do anything about it because I was afraid. I was afraid because of what my parents did when I was 8 and my 15-year-old sister Carolyn fell in love with another woman. My parents got Carolyn's lover fired. They banished Carolyn from the house, and then they tried to have her made a ward of court. Unfortunately, she reached her 16th birthday before, basically her legal minority, before anything really bad happened, and so the court case was rendered moot. But I grew up with that, and when I was 13, I realized I was a dyke too, and I was determined that no one was going to find out until I was 16, so that no one could come and take me away. So for 3 years at Catholic convent school, I kept myself hidden. I kept myself buttoned up tight. Basically, I drank myself stupid. Alcohol's a really great system depressant, and I did lots and lots and lots of sports. So I was on all the teams, tennis and netball. I did gymnastics, so I was always in the showers with all these gorgeous women. And my only defense was really to just be wasted all the time, so that I wasn't, being too obvious. But anyway, eventually, as one does, I hit 16, my legal minority, and I was ready. I fell in love with my best friend, Una Fitzgerald. I had sex with Una at least 3 times a day, every day, for the next year and a half. We had sex in parks and graveyards, sex in bathrooms and empty classrooms, sex at her house and mine. We were not discreet. I'd been waiting for 3 years. I was incandescent with lust. We got caught often. Once we were at the Polytechnic at the weekly student dance on the bathroom floor upstairs, naked as frogs, when a student wandered in. Una and I bolted for the same stall and got jammed in the doorway. Once we were interrupted in Una's bedroom. I had to hide naked in her wardrobe for half an hour while her sister chatted about her boyfriend. It was like a bad farce. Once we were surprised naked from the waist down on the big, shiny desk of Father Lucy, the school chaplain. But wait, there's more. By the time we were in the upper 6th, we'd been caught so many times in so many compromising positions that it no longer fazed us. One afternoon I was approached by a deputation of classmates. The leader cleared her throat and said that while they didn't think loving each other was totally disgusting, having public sex was, and they'd thank us to keep it down to kissing without tongues. Yes, I said, I quite take your point. And the next day got surprised naked in the common room bathroom. I couldn't help it. My parents, though, still didn't know. That is, my father hadn't a clue, and my mother hadn't said a word. On my 17th birthday, I came home from school to find my mother waiting for me. "Did you get cards from your friends?" I nodded. "Show me." I pulled them from my bag, all except the one from Una, which was utterly explicit, and showed them to her. "I don't see one from Una," she said. "Show me Una's." I passed it over. "Well," she said, "I see." And her tone was lemon and vinegar. She handed back the cards. "I'm sure you have homework." I went to my room. Later, she joined me. Her face looked as though it had curdled and then set. "I'll go to hell," she said. "You and Carolyn both, I'll go to hell." A week later, at school assembly, after the prayers and housekeeping business, Sister Anne, the headmistress, said, "Nicola Griffith and Una Fitzgerald to report to Father Lucy's office." Going to hell, I thought. We left assembly and went to the chaplain's office. It's difficult to describe how I felt. Nervous and shocked, yes, but also relieved, even proud. Someone was going to talk about this. Finally. Now it was in the world. It was real. But he was a priest. We'd had sex on his desk. We were going to be expelled and then go to hell. So I took a breath, took Una's hand, and walked in. Father Lucy, a soft-voiced Irishman in his early 30s, smiled at us benignly from behind his desk, his big, shiny desk. Vivid pictures spread-eagled themselves on my retina. Don't think about that, I told myself. Don't think about it. Ah, said Father Lucy. Come in, sit down. Sit. Now, he said, once we were settled in the comfy chairs opposite the desk, that big, shiny, don't think about that. Would you care for a cup of tea? We gaped at him. I take that as a yes, then. And perhaps some biscuits. Yes, I think biscuits. He fussed with the kettle and teapot and the biscuits while Una and I sat there like lumps. So, here we are. He pushed one cup to Una and one cup to me across that big, shiny desk. So, he said again, do you love each other? What? I said. Do you love each other? Yes, I said. Yes, Una said, and we nodded like bobble-headed boobies. But that's all right then. He leaned back in his chair. Now, do you prefer plain or chocolate? What? I said again. The biscuits, he said. Plain or chocolate? He passed the plate of bitties. Now, they're talking about you in assembly, and I'm talking to you here in private. You love each other, and that's a good thing. As Jesus made quite clear, there can never be enough love in the world. But I'd like your agreement on something. I nibbled my biscuit and sipped my tea. A good thing. The priest said loving Una was a good thing. And chocolate biscuits were excellent. In my confusion, the two things seemed equally important. I'd like you to keep your love where it belongs, between yourselves. No more, well... He put his hand on his desk. Let's just say private, and leave it at that. That wasn't the end of it, of course. The hormone tide was too high. We got found in compromising positions a few more times, and eventually I was hauled in front of an ad hoc committee representing the school's board of governors. In typical Catholic style, they threatened to expel Una if I didn't stop all this nonsense. Threatening Una was partly classic Catholic guilt-tripping, partly intellectual snobbery. They couldn't threaten to get rid of me because I was a good student. They didn't want to lose my grades. But being pushed into a corner triggered my dormant storytelling tendencies. And on the spot, I invented for Una a violent father and terrible consequences if he ever found out about this delicate business through expulsion proceedings. And we were allowed to stay. We studied for our A-levels. That is, we cut classes, drank beer, and cavorted naked in empty classrooms. We applied to various institutions of higher education. Una planned to stay in Leeds and pursue business administration at a local college. I was invited to University College London to chat about molecular biology and the University of Manchester's Institute of Science and Technology to discuss, I don't remember what. I didn't go. I didn't care. It was becoming clear to me that I could no more leave Una in Leeds than I could leave my left leg. At home I studied sporadically, sitting in the dining room with my books spread about me, but mostly staring through the window at the sun in the trees and listening to the wood pigeons. The sound of those birds was the sound of summer. They meant open air, roaming in the woods, no schedules. And even at that age, they evoked powerful nostalgia. One afternoon, surrounded by marine biology texts, I wrote 2 poems for Una, called Bird of the Fragile Spirit and Corner for You. I kept neither poem, but I remembered them well enough to use as song lyrics 6 years later. They were full of nostalgia and loss. Loss. At 17, I had already started having the graduate-inspired dreams of beating on the glass partition between nave and choir, while Una married some boy under the approving eye of her parents and mine. Dimly I could sense I was going to lose it all, that happiness wasn't meant to last. I passed all my A-levels. I accepted a place at Leeds University to study microbiology. School, a whole phase of life, was over. To mark the transition, Una and I took a 2-week narrowboat holiday on the Norfolk Broads, an interconnected river, fen and canal system in the flatlands of southeast England. It was freedom of a kind I'd longed for but never had. Cruising the Broads, anchoring to the grassy bank when we saw a pub, eating, drinking, having sex whenever we wanted. Whenever we wanted. For me, it was heaven. I thought it was for Una, too. But one night, when I reached for her again, she burst into tears. "Can't you just let me sleep?" I was shocked. I slept poorly. We didn't talk much the next day. Instead, I drank steadily, misread the water channels, and piloted us into the Royal Naval Docks at Yarmouth. This was high military territory. As we putted towards the huge grey battleships, officers barked orders, white-clad sailors ran about on deck, and 40mm guns cranked slowly round to point at our tiny little wooden boat. I don't really remember the rest of the holiday. Several days after we got back to Leeds, Una invited me to town for some shopping and lunch. We sat in a cafe over coffee and toasted tea cakes, and she told me it was over. She'd found someone else, a boy called Andy. They were to be married. But never, don't ever think I didn't love you, because I did. It was good. And she stood and paid and walked away.